Legend of Northland by Phoebe Carey. It also has 10 MCQs and explanation of the literary devices. Subscribe to this channel for more such videos on grammar section and also on the writing section for class 9th and 10th. So for quick revision with easy answers, let's get started. This is the thumbnail of the previous video in which there is the self-evaluation test, 25 questions with exclusive explanation, theme, literary devices and MCQ practice. So if you haven't watched this video, go and solve these questions and after that come back on this video for answers. So now the question number 1. What kind of winter has been described by the poet in Northland? Northland is a place near the North Pole where winters are freezing cold. According to the poet, it is a place where days are very short and nights they are so long that people they cannot sleep throughout the night. Since it snows throughout the winter, people harness reindeers to their sledges and use them for transportation. Children wear oversized, thick and furry clothes to protect themselves from the cold weather. Why do children look like bear cubs? Which literary device has the poet used to describe it? Children look like bear cubs because their parents make them wear oversized, thick and furry clothes to protect them from the cold weather. This gives them a funny appearance because they look more like bear cubs than human kids. Simile is the literary device that is used by the poet here and children are compared to bear cubs. Question number 3. They tell them a curious story. Who are they and them in the above line? They are the parents or the elders in the family and them refers to the children. 4th, why does the poet say that he believes that the story is not true? Do you also think that the story is not true? What makes you think so? The poet says that the story is not true because it is a legend which is told by one generation to the other. Usually, legends are mythological stories which have no evidence to prove that they are true. Yes, I also think that the story is not true. The woman in the story is changed into a woodpecker because of the curse of Saint Peter. Though it seems unbelievable, but the lesson the poet wants to convey through this legend reaches everyone loud and clear that every selfish act deserves punishment. So the story may not be true, but the lesson or the moral that it wants to deliver, that is obviously it reaches the audience. What is the aim of the poet to tell the story? So again, it's the same aim, the message. It should reach the readers. The aim of the poet is quite clear. He wants to convey a message to the readers that it is a sin to be selfish and self-centered. Selfish people, they do not deserve the blessings of God. Negative traits like greed, selfishness, lack of compassion for fellow beings ultimately lead to punishment. What was the purpose of Saint Peter when he lived in the world below? The purpose of Saint Peter was to travel the world from one place to another and preach people to live a righteous life. Traveling around the world, where did Saint Peter reach one day? What was the woman doing there? Traveling the world, Saint Peter reached the door of a cottage of an old woman in Northland. The woman was baking cakes in her hearth. Saint Peter asked for something from the woman. What was that and why did he ask that? So Saint Peter, he was starving because he had not eaten anything since morning. He had been out traveling throughout the day. He was tired and almost about to faint because of hunger. Therefore, he asked the woman to give him one cake out of the store of her cakes. What happened to the first cake? Why didn't she give the cake to Saint Peter? Saint Peter requested the woman to give a cake to him, so she baked a very small cake for him. But when it was baking, she felt that it was too large to be given away. So she didn't give the cake to Saint Peter. Why did she bake another cake? Did she give the second cake to Saint Peter? Why not? The old woman was not able to give the first cake to Saint Peter. Therefore, she took another piece of dough, a still smaller than the previous one, to bake a cake for Saint Peter. But when she turned it over, she found that it was as large as the previous one. So she was not able to give even the second cake to Saint Peter. Why did she change her mind and bake a thin wafer? In the previous two attempts, the greedy woman was not able to give any cake to Saint Peter because they seemed too large to her. Therefore, she wanted to bake a very thin and tiny cake to give it to Saint Peter. In order to do so, She rolled and rolled a very tiny scrap of the dough into a thin wafer. What did she say about her cakes? What light does it throw on her character? The old woman said that her cakes seemed to be too small to her when she herself had to eat them, but the same cakes seemed too large to be given away to someone. The old woman is self centered, selfish, greedy, and devoid of any benevolence. So, from here, we come to know about these characters traits about the woman. What was the cause of St. Peter's anger? The greed of the old woman, who was not able to give a single cake to St. Peter, was enough to provoke anger in him. St. Peter was almost about to faint because of hunger, but the woman couldn't part with a single cake. This selfishness and lack of compassion made him angry. What did St. Peter tell the woman when she did not give him any cake? St. Peter told the old woman that she was too selfish to live as a human. She did not deserve to enjoy food, shelter, and fire to keep her warm. She was not worthy of enjoying the blessings of God. How did St. Peter curse the old lady, and how did he punish her? On being provoked by the old woman, St. Peter cursed her to build her own nest and work hard the whole day, boring into dry tree trunks to look for scanty food like birds do. He punished the selfish and self obsessed woman by changing her into a woodpecker. What happened after the curse of the saint? Soon after the curse of the saint, the woman went up the chimney of her house and flew out of it, never speaking a word, because she was changed into a woodpecker. As she passed through the chimney, her clothes were burnt to ashes, but the scarlet cap that she was wearing remained as such. That is the reason of the red crest or plume, you can call that, on the crown of the woodpecker. Why did the woman never speak a word after the curse? So, since the woman was changed into a woodpecker after the curse, she didn't speak a word after that. What was the woman changed into and why? So it is again the repetition, so I'll be reading it quickly. So the woman was changed into a woodpecker because she was too selfish to share her blessings with the needy. God had blessed her with food, shelter, and fire to keep her warm in the freezing cold temperature, but she was not charitable enough to share a single cake out of her store of cakes. Therefore, St. Peter punished her to dwell as a woodpecker, building her own nest and working hard the whole day, boring in the hard, dry wood of the tree trunks to get her scanty food. What happened to the clothes of the woman when she was changed into a bird? So, again, a repetition. After St. Peter had cursed the woman, she instantly went up the chimney. She was wearing a red cap at that moment, which remained on her. Her hair means the woodpecker's head, as its red plume or crest. But rest of the clothes that she was wearing were burnt as black as coal due to the flames inside the chimney, thus giving her body black color. So there is a slight change in the question, and therefore the answer also it slightly differs. Why did St. Peter change the woman into a bird and not something else? St. Peter wanted the woman to toil for food and shelter. Since birds did build their own nests and work hard the whole day looking for food, he changed her into a woodpecker to teach her a lesson. So St. Peter wanted that the woman should now work hard to earn her food, because when she had all these gifts, she did not share those blessings with anyone, and that is what actually God wants human beings to do when they are on earth, to share their blessings with those who don't have it. This poem is a ballad. What is a ballad? So, a ballad is a poem or song narrating a story in short stanzas. Traditional ballads, they are typically of unknown authorship, having been passed on orally from one generation to the next. It is a part of folklore and its language is simple. So, this is the definition of a ballad. So it narrates a story. It's in a sing-song type of, you can say, poem or song, because it has a rhythm and it has a rhyme scheme which provides it a sing-song kind of rhythm. And then it is passed on orally from one generation to another, so the authorship is actually not known. It has a simple language. So this poem, it has all these characteristics, therefore it is a ballad. It is written in the form of a ballad, suitable for singing. It has a rhythm, it has a rhyme, it is written in short stanzas, and it is a popular story that is passed on from one generation to another to teach children a lesson of charity in helping the needy, and language is also simple. Now, why is this poem a legend? A legend is an old traditional story. So, since this is a story about Saint Peter, so it is ancient times story. So, it is a old traditional story. Usually, these stories they are not true, but in some regions they are believed to be true by many. So, these stories they have moral or a message. They are narrated to the children from one generation to another for entertainment purpose as well as to teach them a lesson. So how is it different from a ballad? Now, in case of ballad, there should be short stanzas and sing-song kind of rhythm. A rhyme scheme should be there. But a legend, it is a traditional story and it is passed on from one generation to another. It can be written in any form. So ballad, it has a particular form. So this is where they differ. Do you think the woman knew who Saint Peter was? How can you say that? If she had known, what would she have done? Now, no, the woman didn't know who Saint Peter was. Because if she had known that, she would have taken extra care not to make him angry. Maybe she would have offered all her cakes to him with an expectation of getting a reward in return. So, obviously, when she was selfish, she would have been expecting a reward in return. What message do you take home from the poem? The poet highlights that the blessings of God should be shared with the needy. As humans, we should have a compassionate heart and love for fellow beings. The poet wants the readers to learn that people with negative values like selfishness and greed become the subject of wrath of God. Such values are punished, whereas positive values are celebrated. So, we should all develop positive values in ourselves and all the negative values that we have, we should try to convert those negative values into positive. We should try to work on those negative values because we cannot say that everyone is perfect. There are a few negative values, but we should try to convert those negative values into positive ones. Now, according to the poem, how did the woodpecker get its black color and the red crest on its crown? Again, it is a question that we've already done, but the way to write the answer, it may differ. So after St. Peter had cursed the woman, she instantly went up the chimney. She was wearing a red cap at that moment, which remained on her head as its red plume or crest. But rest of the clothes that she was wearing were burned as black as coal due to the flames inside the chimney, thus giving her body a black color. So with this, we revise the whole poem and now we come to the MCQs. Now here are the MCQs and let's find the correct answers. So you have to give the meanings of the words that are in red out of the four choices that are given below. So the first one here is where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows. So out of the choices that is given here, utilize straps, sling and tools. So harness here, it means straps. So this is the answer. Now they tell them a curious story. So meaning of curious here is strange. So this is the answer here. Now next is and walked about it preaching. So preaching here means sermonizing. So here we have the answer. Then being faint with fasting. So fasting means starving. Therefore, she needed another. Now, needed here means to give a shape. So, this is the answer. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough. So, tiny scrap here means a very tiny piece. Then was enough to provoke a saint. To provoke here means to infuriate. To dwell in human form. To dwell means to reside. By boring and boring and boring. So boring here it means digging. And he said, "You are far too selfish." And selfish here means self-obsessed. So these are the MCQs. Now we come to the literary devices. Questions based on the literary devices. So first of all, the rhyme scheme is ABCB. Write the rhyming words of the 11th stanza. So this is the 11th stanza. So here the rhyming words. So rhyming words here from the rhyme scheme we can see the second and the fourth line they rhyme. So faint and saint, they are the rhyming words. So they are written like this. Three examples of similes. So the first example is children look like bear's cubs. Where children they are compared to bear cubs. Then baked it thin as a wafer. So it here is stands for cake. So she tried to bake a very thin cake like a wafer. But all the rest of her clothes were burnt black as a coal. So black as a coal, the clothes, the color of the clothes here, they became black because they were burnt, and therefore it gave black color to the body of the woodpecker. So here like has been used. So simile, as has been used. So here again as has been used. So therefore it's a simile. Now, where has the poet used repetition? What is the purpose of repetition of words in a poem? Away, away in the Northland, the first line of the poem. So its purpose is to emphasize the distance. That is, that Northland is a place very, very far away. So it provides rhythm to the poem also. Then second example is and rolled it flat. So again the purpose is to emphasize the effort of the woman to roll the dough into a really thin wafer. So she kept on rolling and rolling until it was a very thin wafer. It highlights her selfishness and also gives the rhythm to the poem. Then by boring and boring and boring. So again the purpose is to emphasize the hard work required by the woman. So now after the course, when she was converted into a bird to find scanty food for her. It also provides rhythm to the poem. So rhythm, obviously repetition gives rhythm, and also it emphasizes the act or whatever the poet is trying to say. Now two examples of enjambment from the poem. There are many examples, but I have chosen these two stanzas. So the good saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. Now here, this third line is running into the fourth line. So there is no pause, no comma, there is no period or full stop. So therefore it is called enjambment. The thought, it is running from the third line into the fourth line. Similar in the second stanza again, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. So again the third line, it is running into the fourth line, and therefore it is called enjambment. So you can find other examples of enjambment also in the poem. Now this question, and surely such a woman. So you have to identify the literary device of the marked letters in the above. So here S it is underlined, here S it is underlined. So is this literary device alliteration? No, it is not an alliteration. Now why it is not alliteration? When I speak and surely, the sound is sure, and when I speak this such, the sound is sir. So therefore this is not literary device. So many times students, they do this mistake. They just see S here and S here and they write it as alliteration. So now two examples of alliteration from the poem. And being faint with fasting. So it is first sound is repeating. Now here you can see this S and this S, and still smaller, sir, sir. So that is why this is again alliteration. So S sound is repeating. So that's all for today. Do subscribe to my channel if you found it interesting and useful. Give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends so that they can also revise the poem. How helpful did you find it? Do write in the comment box. Go to the playlist and find other lessons of 9th class, and you can revise all the lessons from there. Follow me on Instagram so that you can be updated on my next video. I'll give the links in the description box. So that's all for today, and happy watching and happy preparation.